Hi, everyone. It's really great to have you here. I'm Robin. I'm the Digital Marketing Manager at Learning People. I've been organising these webinars for quite a long time, for about a year, but this is actually the first time I've ever hosted one. It's my debut. So be kind and wish me some luck, I guess. So what you should leave with after this is an idea of a clear understanding of how to successfully break into the professional cybersecurity landscape. Even if you're a career switcher or a career changer coming from a different sector, or maybe you're even starting your career from scratch, which would mean you don't have any formal work experience yet or direct formal work experience in another cyber role. I'm sure there are people on this call who are familiar with the paradox or the frustrating situation of seeing experience needed, and you feel you need the experience to get the job, but you need the job to get the experience. That's what we mean by the no experience paradox. And we've got some exciting speakers to talk to today who could help you think more tactically about how to break that paradox and how to work your way into your first role. So let's meet the speakers then. First up is James Stanger. James is a really exciting name to have on a webinar, or just to be associated with generally in the world of cyber and the cyber landscape. So he's worked, do correct me if I get any of this wrong, James, when you talk in a sec, but he's worked as a security consultant, presenter, certification program designer, and curriculum designer in the space of cyber for over 2 decades. So good credentials there. He's an award-winning author, blogger, journal contributor, having written titles for McGraw-Hill, Prentice Hall, and IBM. I think it's coming up to 13 years he's worked for CompTIA now. And for those who don't, I mean, I think many of our cyber students or alumni will know this well. But for those who don't know, CompTIA is a world-leading trade association that provides certifications and training for IT and cyber industry, and provided the certifications we offer. So this role for James has seen him work worldwide with everyone from students like yourself to corporate leaders and even heads of state, which is very impressive. My favourite bit is the title, your job title, James, Chief Tech Evangelist at CompTIA, which is such a cool title. Huh? Yeah, I'll hand over to you now to say a little bit more about what that means.
Well, sure. My job is to work with industry leaders around the world, but also students such as yourselves, folks. So I kind of act as a liaison between what the industry wants and needs and with what you can provide. And so it's great to be here and to do that. I've been ignored by a lot of people and listened to by a lot of people as well over the years. And I just say that, for example, recently I did a tour through a lot of Asia and talked to a lot of industry leaders there, and they were very clear about some of the things that they're looking for in employees. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, great. We're really happy to have you back. It's been about 8 months since we spoke to you last.
It's been too long, yeah.
It has, yeah, but I think that's a good amount of time to let the industry shift and change as it does, and to check in now about the about how that looks. So to put you on the spot, I'm going to ask this to the other speaker as well. Could you say one thing that you're professionally proud of that's happened recently-ish, just as a small icebreaker for the people watching?
One of the things I'm professionally proud of is working with other members of the industry having to do with education. For example, I work pretty closely with other providers. There's CompTIA out there, but there are others. There's SANS GIAC, there's ISC2, there's ISACA, CertNexus, there IAPP. All of these odd names and things are people who are industry leaders. And as I've been relatively recently elected president of something called the C3, and it's just nice to be working every day on helping resolve industry problems together, working with people. Communication's where it's at. So.
Wow, that is impressive. And that's another great credential to add to that long list that I started with at the beginning. Thank you so much. That's great. Thanks, James.
You bet,
thank you. Our second guest today is one that I'm sure a lot of you on this call will benefit from hearing from. I know this because whenever we run these webinars, we get a lot of questions around the practical side of applying for jobs, whether it's cyber or beyond. So how to position yourself in the market, how to write your CV, how to network, set up your LinkedIn profile. So I'm really happy to say that today we have one of our very own Learning People Career Services advisors on the call, Sophi Barnes, from our Career Services team. So our Career Services advisors like Sophi are having these conversations with our graduate students and alumni every day about how they can position themselves in the job markets and actionable advice and how they can go about writing their applications. this team is a crucial part of the Learning People mission, because our mission or our goal is to get people into jobs they love and into rewarding careers. So what Sophi and her team does is help close the gap between passing your exams and getting the skills you need, and then actually landing the job that they wanted, that they love, through this advice. Sophi's been with us for a couple of years now, but has a longer history in career advising and recruitment. I'm sure we'll have a lot of actionable advice to share today. So Sophi, I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself a bit more, and also same question, one thing you're professionally proud of from recently.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Robin. Yeah, so I'm Sophi. I'm hoping that some of you on here probably know who I am, because I know I've encouraged some of my students to log on tonight. So hopefully some of you recognise me. But yeah, Robin's right. I've worked for Learning People now for almost 2 years. But before that, I had, experience in supporting all sorts of people back into work across different careers and industries. And I work alongside two colleagues that are fantastic, and we've got sort of a wide range of experience in tech, security, project management, data, all of our kind of pathways that we study. But I guess our main goal is what we do when we're happy in work is when we see you guys progressing and getting the jobs that you want. I think for me, probably the biggest achievement, and luckily I got given a heads up by Robin earlier that I was going to be asked this, so I've had a bit of a think about it. And actually, Learning People has been around for a long time, way longer than where I've been. And actually, we've just come out the financial year, and that financial year was our strongest year ever when it comes to placements. We actually had double the amount of placements that we had in that financial year to the previous year. So that just shows the amount of work that we put into our students. And actually, I had a quick look at the roles specifically in cyber. And actually the cyber market and the roles that people have been getting, we've had principal cybersecurity consultants, we've had cyber apprentices, we've had SOC analysts, we've had cyber interns. And I think that just shows all the different levels. We're not just talking entry level, we're talking people really progressing through their career. And again, some of the big names we've placed people in, we've placed people in Amazon, the Canary Wolf Group, the Royal Navy, Sky. So these are huge names and getting recognised. So I think for us, that's probably my proudest achievement in sort of the last sort of month, is seeing the amount of people that we have actually worked with, because I think it's easy to kind of forget about the whole year. And when you put it all together, it's amazing where some of our students have ended up.
Yeah, it is. The success stories of our students, it's something we're really proud of. And like I said, your team does a lot of work to close the gap between them passing and then getting into those jobs. And that's what really excites us and motivates everyone. So yeah, it's great to hear those examples as well. Some really big names in the places where they've found work. Really good example. Thank you, Sophi. So we'll be coming back to our speakers shortly. At this point, I'm going to give a little bit more info, so some context about why we chose this theme. But before I do that, I'm going to launch a poll, and this is where you'll have to bear with me. So I'm going to launch a poll asking everyone in the audience where you are at the moment in your job search. So you should see that on your screen now, and you can choose the answers to that. So we just wanted to get a little bit of a feel of where the audience is in terms of, are they right at the start? Do you know cyber experience yet at all? Are you studying? Are you looking for your role, or are you actually looking for your next role to progress? I can see people answering already. So I'll let you do that while I just give a few stats. So we spoke to James last about 8 months ago. We discussed why cybersecurity and data roles are in such high demand, and also about how to break into the industry. So very similar themes. But the industry is changing so fast. So we thought this was a good time to check in again and see what's changed and see where the industry is moving. So some useful upfront stats for the UK landscape. It's recently been reported that the UK government's investing 210 million in cyber resilience as part of its government cyber action plan. And the National Audit Office has recently warned that cyber skill shortages remain one of the biggest risks to government security. So I started with that because that kind of outlines why there is there is demand out there for professionals. But then we have on the other side the data from the cybersecurity skills in the UK labour market report. It's very long, by the UK government, which was last updated only in February of this year. So a couple of months ago, states that the cyber professionals hired in the last 12 months in the UK, of those that were entry-level candidates, only comprised of 17%, which is down from 25% the year before. So that kind of shows a downward trend in the hiring of entry-level candidates. But that is offset by looking at the same report. 28% of these hires were career converters. So that means people moving into cyber from non-cyber roles, using their existing skills to pivot, so their transferable skills to pivot into cyber. And 15% of those hired were career starters, so fresh graduates or apprentices. It also notes that there's a global shortage of 4.8 million cybersecurity professionals. So it's big numbers. So I wanted to start with these stats because to make clear that while the no experience paradox we're talking about that you might have experienced is a thing, it's not all in your head. It's not completely easy to walk into your first cyber role. There is undeniable workforce and skill shortages that make the UK and countries worldwide vulnerable to risk. And there are realistic pathways into this sector for people with no formal or direct work experience, which is what we want to get into today. And hopefully, hopefully we'll find interesting. So we will now move on to our speakers, I promise, but I'm just going to have a quick look at the poll results. I'll share them now. So 26% of the audience are right at the start of their cyber journey, so no experience yet, coming in fresh. We have 47 people who are studying or gaining knowledge at the moment, which is great. So we've got some students on the call. 26% who are looking for their first role, so are in that active job search stage. So I think the things that you have to say, Sophie, will be really interesting to that 26%. And we have no one looking to progress. So we've got a spread of people who are either from right at the start to through studying, looking for their first job. So I suppose that's kind of the subject matter will be perfect for that audience. That's really good to see. So thank you for answering that. There'll be a couple more polls throughout. So without further ado, James Stanger, you're up for the first part. So the first part of this webinar, we're going to be looking quite top level, the cyber horizon, where the money and machines are moving. So this is how the cybersecurity landscape and job market is changing, the impact of AI trends, which I'm sure is something you're thinking and talking a lot about, James, and also where the salaries are moving in terms of what roles are maybe becoming higher paid, maybe coming more into focus. So if you don't mind, we'll start nice and broad. What is the current state of cyber in 2026? What's the top line? What would you say has changed since we last spoke 8 months ago?
One of the things that's really important when it comes to cyber is communication. And that sounds kind of odd, I'm sure. It's like, well, what do you mean? I thought it was technical stuff and things. But what's really important when it comes to the advent using AI every day in cybersecurity, using automation, doing incident response. And I'm focusing on incident response because that's one of the top skills. And the answer is better, excuse me, I got a cold, better communication. And so what we're seeing at CompTIA are people who aren't just conversant with technology, but who can communicate with each other. And that's just a really key, concept there. So that's one thing I wanted to emphasize. I was recently at a conference. It was in the United States. I've been to a bunch of them. One was in Singapore recently, but it's called RSA 2026. It's one of the big ones. InfoSec Europe is coming up in June for the UK. And the messages were heard loud and clear. Sure, AI is everywhere. Fine. Post-quantum is a thing. But what they're really looking for is resilience. And the way that you get resilience is not just to buy cool new stuff. When I say new stuff, new software or new services, but it's really communication that helps bring about resilience. So there you go. Long answer. So I'll try to keep the future one short. So
no, that's great. I mean, that's a really good start. We do have a couple more kind of questions coming a bit later about where going to the future there. So I think that's perfect amount of context for right now.
Okay.
It's interesting you pick up on I don't know if you'd call them, I guess you would call them soft skills, so resilience and communication, and how they're becoming even more important, and how, if I understood correctly, that goes hand in hand with the adoption of AI. So the more AI, the more human in the loop kind of overlay we need. Is that right?
Yes, very much so. And what I can do is share my screen. If it doesn't share, you'll have to say, hey, James, learn how to, use a computer. One never knows. So let me give it a shot here. When I say the right screen, you should see a report that we have.
Yes, yeah, we can see that now.
It says many aspects involved in changes to cybersecurity approach. Can you see that?
Yes, yeah.
So the reason I put this up here is you asked about some of the things that have changed over the last 8 months or something like that. Now, obviously, AI informs all of these things. That's one of the first things. It's like it's not a new thing. AI, for a lot of cybersecurity folks, it is and it isn't new, but it's mostly not new. For example, spam filters, we all know what spam filters are on some level. They've been using AI for 30 years. Okay. So, but when it comes to other forms of AI, generative AI and things like that, it is coming in on all of these levels. But notice where it says higher priority on incident response. And just so you know, and I'll try to make this clear, this is reports from I think about 1,000 industry leaders from around the world about key concepts and practices and key areas of cybersecurity that they're looking for. It's from the State of Cybersecurity 2025 report. So there's that. And now I'm drilling down into this table here. And notice, incident response, regulations, so governance, risk management, I would say also goes to governance. There's a lot of investment in technology and tools. A lot of that's because of AI, employee education. But when it comes to breaking that paradox of how do I get experience, think of it this way, folks. Whatever the industry problem is of the day, or of the week, or of the year, or whatever it is, right? Find out what that is, find out what those trends are, and then see what kind of experience you can start throwing at that. And by that, a lot of people, you're probably going, well, hey, man, I'm an Uber driver. What experience do I have in incident response? Well, actually, if you are an Uber driver or in an industry that's not cybersecurity oriented, there are things that are very analogous that you do every day that apply to incident response. So a lot of us have more experience in some of these areas. Indirect experience, yes, but you can start parlaying that. You can start building that. So I'll stop right there. But I just wanted to give some people some idea of some of the ideas, how should I put the skills, some of the approaches of cybersecurity that are important. So there's that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can be almost certain that when we come to speak to Sophie in a little bit, she'll have plenty of similar things to say about transferable skills from different types of roles. So I think I've heard her speak about this before. And yeah, I think you're quite aligned on that. So that's a really great starting point. Thank you, James.
Sure. And I'll stop sharing. So there you go. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And it worked flawlessly. It was perfect.
Oh, who knew? All right.
So that makes a lot of sense in terms of the skills. In terms of the job market forecast, what would you say about roles which are maybe going more sort of out of, so being sunsetted due to automation, and which are exploding? So I feel like there's like, even in the last 8 months since we spoke, there are roles that are becoming possibly less relevant or which are more affected by AI, but those probably in the governance space, as I mentioned already, human in the loop, AI governance, are picking up momentum. So what would you say on that front?
Yeah, as far as skills that are going out, I would say this. It's more what skills can be automated. I was at a conference in Singapore, and one of the persons stood up and said, it's your job to automate yourself by the end of 2026. And I'm like, automate myself. Okay. So what are some of those skills that can be easily automated? So I'm not saying that when it comes to, say, pen testing, that is going to remain relevant. But there are areas of pen testing that can be more easily automated than others. For example, in pen testing, there's the practice of doing reconnaissance and discovery, investigating a person, investigating a company and the systems. A lot of those tools are increasingly automated. You still need to know how to use Nmap, et cetera, but what can you do? Nmap's a tool, if folks don't know, it's a tool that is used to map out networks. It's been around for decades, even longer than almost as long as I have been around, but it's still very useful. But you have to find ways to automate it. So there are efficiencies within, say, pen testing, or efficiencies within security analytics. So pen testing is offense, security analytics is defense, and there are repetitive tasks in those. And the whole idea is to find ways to make yourself more efficient in those areas. Efficient simply meaning, okay, I can, have a bot, an agent, do that for me. So it's not so much specific. I'm not quite seeing entire job roles that are going out of existence, et cetera, but I am seeing job roles that are having to automate. And there's nothing wrong with that, really. There's nothing wrong with automating repetitive tasks. There's also, though, situations where AI does more than just make a process more efficient. Sometimes it'll eliminate the entire process. Um, and cybersecurity threat intelligence remains a very important concept and a very important thing. But you're not going to be able to read all that intelligence yourself. You're not going to have a team do that for you and then send you updates. You're going to have AI doing that. So just some things to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But would you say then, based on that, don't let me put words in your mouth, but would you
Oh,
say
go ahead.
some,
Yeah.
okay, cool. I mean, you can challenge this if you want, but I mean, I have a growing feeling that maybe some of the fear about AI taking jobs is maybe a bit misplaced, and maybe it's
Usually,
more about
yes.
curiosity about how it's going to
Mhm.
make our change our jobs, make our lives easier, free us up for more human input over menial tasks. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. A couple of things. AI can take jobs in a couple of different ways. One, if you have a very repetitive job, it'll take that job. But we've seen that with automobiles. We've seen that with simple scripts and things like that. The cloud took away jobs, but it also gave jobs. When it comes to AI, the one way that it can take jobs in a very brutal and unfair way is if an organization that you work for, a tech company, but when I say tech company, folks, I don't mean companies that use tech or organizations that use tech. Governments use tech, banks use tech, aerospace companies use tech. Tech companies are like Google and Facebook or whatever. What those companies tend to do is they kind of make a 5 year bet. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, Sophie, but they make a bet basically that says in 5 years, here's where we think the world will be. Here's where we are right now. And so you make a bet. Well, financially, most companies in the tech sector, specifically Google or whatever, when it comes to AI, are making huge bets, larger bets than usual. Don't worry, I'm coming to the conclusion here in a second. Uh, um, they make huge bets where they're going to lay their money. And right now they're really, they don't want to get behind in the AI game. So they're very willing to sacrifice a lot of current employees and things like that to lay down the money to bet on new data centers or new techniques or new approaches for AI. That can take jobs away, but that doesn't mean AI replaced pen testers. It just meant that the company is saying, well, we have so much money, and so we're going to eliminate these jobs here and make a bet. What I tend to see is those pen testers don't work for the tech companies anymore and they go work for a bank. That's
Mm.
that's one of the things to think about. I'm sorry that's really long-winded, but I just wanted to point that out that a lot of the things that you're seeing when it comes to the large layoffs have to do one with the economy has gotten really weird and really volatile over the last
Yeah.
couple of years, right? I mean, for fairly obvious reasons. And then two, companies laying down bets. So there are nuances to why you see disruptions in the job market.
Yeah. And I guess to an extent, to be really savvy about it, you could probably start to identify patterns in where the focus is going from a lot of the big companies and which roles seem to be getting more attention and coming more into focus. And in that vein, I mean, to be crass and talk about money, where would you say the salaries are shifting to? So what are I mean, from a little bit of research I've done, uh,
Yeah.
again, I keep talking about governance, but it keeps coming up. But
No, governance is a really big a really big concern. And you're right. The big thing about governance is making it faster.
Mm,
How can you, if things are shifting every week, kind of thing is what we're seeing. How do you make governance shift along with it? Because it usually takes 18 months to set up a governance structure. So yes, money is going there. If you are interested in cybersecurity right now, that is one of the many job roles that will work for you. Um, Other areas that are kind of interesting when it comes to AI, um, kind of when it comes to cybersecurity, what can you do to protect AI? What are some of the systems you can call it systems engineer? Is it a systems engineer that works in the cloud? And because most companies will source their AI tools from some sort of cloud provider, Azure, Amazon, Google, whatever.
yeah.
Um, so basically being a good cloud engineer or a cloud cybersecurity engineer, because now organizations are very interested in making sure that the data is secure. So cloud engineer and also data security, looking into the different elements. What kind of rate limiting can you put in place? That's a very specific concept about data security. So data security, cloud engineering, identity access management, those are really
Mm.
important areas. Because if AI is fed by data, AI also works with identities all of the time. It sifts through Sophie's identity, your identity, my identity, etc. And if you don't have your identity management ducks in a row, if you're still using, you know, the traditional Active Directory from 1999, you're going to have problems. So identity access management becomes another issue, another real key area where salaries are going. And I'll end with zero trust was the big one of the big, what do you want to call it? Big names, big terms 2, 3 years ago. People don't talk about that as much anymore, but they're still doing it and they're still implementing it. So anything having to do with constant monitoring and then constant identity access management, those areas. But constant monitoring and zero trust, even though they don't use that term as much anymore, that remains a real key area. So, let's see, one more just popped into my head that I want to talk about. It's
Lots
not
of
a
high
cyber,
salary jobs out there.
no, right. It's not a cybersecurity job role specifically, but the idea of networking at the edge. Traditional networking, folks, is where you have a router somewhere, and then you have a firewall, and then you have servers, and then on the other side, you have individuals, right? What's happening more and more, especially with the advent of AI, is that data and the computing can't just take place in a server that's so many steps away. It has to be brought to the edge of the user towards us. And so we need people to understand the cybersecurity implications of that. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, a lot of roles there, a lot of very specific areas, which I'm sure,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great for the audience to learn. I definitely learned a few things there. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is going to be your last question. Before I ask you the last question of this section, and we move on to Sophie to talk about some of the advice to do with applications and CVs, I'm
Sure.
going to launch another poll around that theme. So you should see that now. So this poll is to get a feeling of how confident people are in the audience are when it comes to applying for jobs. So how confident do you feel creating your CV, that your LinkedIn profile is well optimized?
Cool.
Yeah, and the interview process. So I'll leave that there for you to answer. So the final question for you, James, of this section, to segue into that next section about skills and applications, it was actually going to be about soft skills and human skills, but you've answered that already. So I'm not going to ask you again, but it got me thinking. One of the skills I had on here for my research was curiosity. And I remember when we spoke to you 8 months ago, you spoke about how important curiosity was to you when you were launching your own career.
Yeah.
I remember a story stuck with me that you told about how you would just turn up in server rooms and ask people, like, what's going on? What's this? How does this work? And even if you were a bit annoying to them at the beginning, they'd
Oh,
eventually
I'm sure I was. Yeah.
and they'd give you the answers. So just a quick kind of 1 minute answer or so about that. Would you still say that in this day and age, just curiosity and kind of showing up and learning how things work and talking to the right people, is that still as important as it was when you started your career?
I think it's even more important. Always be learning, ABL, right, or whatever. But the idea of curiosity also means listening. I've noticed over the last few years, not a lot of people want to listen, and here I am talking all day long. But I it's really interesting that part of curiosity is speaking because you have to express what you're learning. But I would use something like I can never remember what it is. I think it's called the Feynman dialogue. Uh, the Feynman technique. Uh, Richard Feynman was, I think his name was Richard. The Feynman technique is basically this, where you choose a concept to learn, right? Whether governance, okay, and the technique is involved is you actually teach the concept to somebody. You actually sit down and say, "Hey, can I explain it to you a little bit?" And then what you do is you realize that you have to refine and simplify your knowledge. That's the third. That's another step, and then you identify gaps in your knowledge, and it's kind of a circle. So you choose a concept, you teach it to someone. That shows that as you're teaching it, you realize, yeah, I need to listen more, or I need to find out more things, and then you refine it, and it's kind of a circular thing. It's Richard Feynman came up with it decades ago, and it's something that is very useful. But right now, I think it's really important to listen and start to grow a sense of discernment. There's a whole lot of bad information running around out there, just a whole lot. Uh,
Yeah.
a lot of AI is not helping that. Some AI is helping solve that. But I think it's really being able to listen and then sift through information. If you can prove to people that you have the ability to kind of cut through and say, well, let's get to some facts here, or let's get to an area where we can, if not agree, but understand where things are going. It's that negotiation of trust that's really important.
Yeah, discernment in an age where there's so much overwhelm of information out there. I guess being curious, it also leads into interrogating that information and talking to the right people and forming your own ideas about it. Great, thank you. That's a nice way to end that section. And we've got the poll results in as well, which I'll share now. So I'm very happy for the 6% who feel very confident in applying for jobs. That's great. I would love a bit of that confidence. But we have then 56% who are quite confident, which is good, but need a bit of guidance, which is exactly what our career services team is there for. And then 14% not sure, haven't thought about it much yet. And then 24%, so maybe not quite at that stage of applying. And then 24% who really struggle. So I'm sorry to hear it's such a struggle, but don't know where to start. So again, that's exactly what the career services offering can help with, and what hopefully some of the content today will help with as well. So thank you for sharing. It's good to know where people are at who are watching. That might help Sophie as well with answering some of these questions that we have, knowing who's out there. How are you, Sophie? How are you doing?
Yeah, all good. All good.
So again, correct me if I'm wrong about this information, but how I understand career services team and how you work, there's a structured program for helping people through the application process, and that roughly follows the structure of helping them understand how to do the industry research they need to do to start the job search, and then going through advice for the CV, for networking and LinkedIn profile, and then how to prepare for interviews and preparing for what I'm sure for most people is quite a high stress situation for interviews. That's correct?
Yeah, absolutely. That's correct.
Excellent. So should we start at the beginning? Should we start with industry and industry research? So why is doing this so important at the beginning of a job search?
I think, and for those of you that end up working with any of us in our team, you'll hear us talk about research a lot. And a lot of people kind of get a bit confused around why we start with research. Now, research is important in any job search, whether you're cybersecurity or looking at any type of market, research is important. But I would say it is particularly important within cybersecurity. Understanding cybersecurity and the industry is going to help you target your efforts. And I cannot stress enough, employers know when you've done homework. They know when you've done homework, and they know when you understand your target sort of industry and your sectors and what you're looking for. You'll start to learn the landscape. So there's so many, as James has said, there are so many different roles in cybersecurity, whether you're starting right at the beginning and you're just sort of IT support, transitioning into sort of security roles, or your incident responders, whatever it is, cloud security engineers, whatever it is, they will all require different skills. A lot of them being soft skills, a lot of them being transferable skills. But if you understand what they're asking for, you can build on that, and we can start to really put it into your CV. You'll start to really for those of you starting out in your career, again, it's probably a bit overwhelming when we talk to you about all the different roles and what route to go and what's suitable to you. If you do your research, you'll start to identify those entry routes. As I said, most people start their cyber career, through sort of those IT support, but there's other ways that you can do it. And by identifying what's interesting to you, for us, the most important reason why we want you to do research is because it allows us to really align your CV with demand. So we're not just giving you a generic CV. We're not just telling you, here's a templated CV. Actually, we're going to talk about what employers really care about, the tools, the frameworks, all of those things that come up in cybersecurity. You're going to be using the terms like risk, vulnerabilities, all those kind of things. If you can get those words in there and do your research, your applications are going to stand out far more than anyone else. So to me, if you don't have research, your applications are just going to look generic. You're going to fall into the pool of everyone else. But with it, you're going to look really intentional, really informed, really professional. And that is what's going to make you stand out. Even if you're out and about at an event talking to someone, if you understand your market, you don't have to be an expert, but if you've just done that research and you kind of know the right questions to ask and you know the different roles, people are going to know you're serious, and that's what makes the difference. So apologies for those of you that end up working with me, but you'll hear me bang on about two things, and that is research and networking. They are the two key things in today's market. If you smash that, there's no reason why you won't land a role that you want to get.
That's great to hear. And it was interesting what you were saying about how it's not, if you think about it over the course of an entire career, not just even this first job, it's not necessarily a one and done thing, because the landscape changes, the things that employers are asking for might change. And so when then going for your next role, it's probably worth doing that process again, I suppose, of doing the industry research, understanding what's out there.
To be honest, I would never stop researching. We talk about if you're progressing within your career, I would be saying you want to start research now at entry level, and then if you're sort of progressing throughout that, you want to research. And I think, I'm sure you guys will quote me on it, but I think we said yesterday that tech within all sort of areas of tech, it changes every couple of weeks, if not sooner. So if you keep on top of that research, when you do go for those more senior roles, you're not suddenly thinking, oh my goodness, I'm so far away from this. You've been building that experience with your research and you're kind of ready to take that next step quite naturally. So, research, I would do it throughout when you're looking for jobs, but also when you're in your roles, just carry on understanding what the market's like. I cannot stress enough that employers know when you've done that, and it really comes across in interview situations or networking situations.
Yeah. So not a step to be missed. And also, like you say, this is a dynamic sector, like a lot of tech sectors are, and that makes it really rewarding and I suppose exciting to work in it, but also needs to keep on top of it and what employers are looking for. So you touched also on CV writing and how a CV that stands out and is not generic and is bespoke to what's needed is important. So let's build on that a little bit. So that would be the next kind of next stage in the advice you'd give. So how would you advise people to write an effective CV if they are changing career? So if their career changes, career switches, changing into cyber, have had other jobs before, but no direct formal work experience in the cyber industry. How might that be different from just a standard CV?
So to be honest, I want to echo what James said, because actually, James, you touched on this perfectly earlier. Not everyone, but most people I speak to when I start working with them is they will say, so I've got no experience. I want to get into cybersecurity, but I've only worked in retail, or I've only been an Uber driver. I've got absolutely no experience. And I'm like, honestly, send me your CV. You will be surprised at what I can pick out in what you've done before that is transferable into a career, particularly into cyber. If you don't have direct cyber experience, your goal is that you want to translate what you've done into cyber experience. So if you think about it like this, if you're in retail, for example, which a lot of our students have come from sort of a retail background, customer data protection, that's important in cyber, handling sensitive information, fraud awareness, all of that is huge. Background in project management, a lot of our students might have a bit of a project background, risk management, incident handling, process improvement, admin roles, data handling, compliance. Even less than that, they're still quite specific skills, communication, problem solving. All of it is around not listing your day-to-day duties. It's about how do we translate it into cyber, and also if you lack experience, that doesn't mean you haven't got the right effort and direction. So proof of commitment goes a really long way. And often people going for a career change, particularly people studying with us, often people see that as a barrier. It isn't a barrier. You haven't woken up this morning and thought, that SOC analyst role on Indeed looks okay. You've actually thought about it. You've invested in your studies. So mention things like your certifications, get some home labs, and there's lots of different kind of home labs that you can do online. Start to build those projects. And I think employers, they hire potential and evidence, not just experience. And what we do in our team is you will be surprised at the amount of people that will tell me they have no experience. You will. It doesn't matter what you've done, whether you are fresh out of uni, you've had 2 years off looking after children, you've gone and traveled the world, or you've got completely different work experience. We will be able to unpick that and make sure it's transferable to a career in cyber. And the tip, just one other thing, the tip that I say to everyone is just go online and look at jobs. Go online, look at the different cyber roles that are out there, look at the different tech roles that are out there, look at the skills. You'll be surprised at what they're asking. As you say, communication comes up in every single job description. Start to pick out those skills, the recurring ones you want on your CV anyway. And then if there's some skills on there that you think, I'm not quite sure I'm there yet, you're in the perfect opportunity now to start to build in those skills. So if you haven't got it, use the certifications, use the projects, go out to networking events, and you'll be surprised how you can build that. But that's what we do. We're going to be there to hold your hand through that and support you to pick out those skills.
I'm sure that is extremely encouraging for a lot of people on this call to hear. that there's probably a lot more to their experience than some of them realise. And I knew there was going to be something about transferable skills and skill sets in there.
Always,
so
always.
It is so important, and so important for people's confidence to realise
for sure.
and how to apply them.
Sure.
So are you ready to talk about your next favourite thing, networking?
Networking.
So, a question about how to approach networking on LinkedIn. But I mean, LinkedIn is going to be a big part of it, but not the only part of it. So let's say networking in general and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
What's your best advice?
So again, apologies to those of you that end up working with me, because I will bang on about this until I'm blue in the face. Networking is key to your career, wherever you are, even sessions like this, connect with people on the call. All of us are sharing stuff about cybersecurity, whatever it is. I actually believe that this is the single most powerful tool in any job search. Particularly cybersecurity, it's heavily relationship driven. Most roles are filled internally. They're shared, they get shared before they get posted. They're given to referrals. They're given to people that they know. We talk a lot about the hidden job market, and I think, don't quote me on the specifics, but only about 25% of jobs make it to job boards. And that's what we all use when we're job searching. When I've job searched in the past, I'm solely relying on job boards, but only 25% of jobs make it there. So that means there's 75% of opportunities out there that you're just not seeing. And that is where networking comes in. I think if you're on LinkedIn, and we talk about this in a lot of detail, so without giving away what we'll do with you when you get to us, start connecting with the right people, start connecting with stock analysts, cybersecurity analysts, recruiters that specialize in cybersecurity. Start to send simple messages. Don't overthink it. Hi, I'm transitioning into cybersecurity. I really, really loved what you said in that webinar. I'd love to connect with you, learn from your journey. I'm sure, James, you get messages like that all the time. I have no doubt. People want to see people progress, and people are far, far more likely to respond if it's a really chilled out message and they're reflecting on something that they've said. Engage consistently. I'm sure we all have access to different social media platforms. I'm sure if you look at my Instagram against someone else's Instagram account, algorithms, and I'm not going to pretend I know how that works, but as soon as you like one post, every post is about, I like a post about a cat, which I love. Every post I see is about a cat. LinkedIn and networking is exactly the same. So when you're on LinkedIn, comment on posts, share your journey, post about your certifications. The more you're sharing, the more you'll see, and the more you appear on their searches. But also get yourself out and about at an event. They are scary, and I can sit on these, but if you see me at an event, I'll be hiding behind my colleagues and I'll be making them make those first conversations. They are scary, but if you can get over that initial sort of hurdle, and some people are better at it than others, but just get to an event, see the different organizations that are out there, connect with people, building that rapport face to face. If you don't have experience, people, and I'm sure you can all echo this, people are far, far more likely to take a chance on you if they've met you in person, because you've built that relationship. I think, Soph's all right. She hasn't got direct experience, but I know she wants to learn, and that is key. So, this is what builds those relationships, and in turn will lead to those opportunities, not necessarily straight away, but somewhere down the road, hopefully that will present itself as an opportunity.
Yeah, but I mean, absolutely. And it's interesting to hear how you say you find networking quite nerve-wracking, or that you'll go with your colleagues and you're happy for them to make the first introductions. But there's maybe a misconception around networking only being for really outgoing, gregarious people.
No.
That's not true. From
No.
what I say about it.
No, and I think we all benefit from different types of networking. We instantly assume it's going out to these huge events. It isn't. Joining webinars today, meeting people in online webinars, all of these opportunities are ways to meet people. So we talk about it a lot as you get to us. So for those of you that have already joined my sessions, we talk about it a lot there, but we'll give you some really strong ways to network. Even if you're not overly outgoing, there will be a way that works for you. So yeah, there's lots.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's something that a lot of people, the first thing they say when you mention networking is, "Oh God, I don't like it." But yeah, there are different ways to do it.
Mark will tell you, Mark Wheatland, he has to literally drag me to an event, and I hide behind him until he's kind of like, right, so go and talk to people. So I do understand that it's scary, but and we're often at events. So I've met with students at events and we've networked together. So there's lots of opportunities that we could do with you guys.
Great, it's good to hear. Yeah, Mark is our head of education, and he's a little bit too good at networking. I think he's like the gold standard of networking and going to conferences and
yeah.
So yeah, good inspiration. So to round off this section, we're getting to the final stage now, which is how you prepare for interviews, especially if you're starting out in cyber, and it's I suppose a kind of career switcher interview. So I'm sure a lot of the same themes around talking about cyber skills is going to come up. But yeah, what would you say to people? Because there were quite a few people in that poll who are at this stage of interview. So what would you say?
I mean, to me, I wouldn't think about interview preparation until you've got an interview. Often people say to me, Soph, can we interview prepare? And I'm like, well, if you haven't got an interview, let's focus on the application side of things. I think particularly when you're at entry level and you're transitioning, employers don't expect you to know everything that they assess, everything that they want, everything that they assess, sorry. So, they're going to assess things like how you think, how you handle under pressure, how you approach problems, and they're all transferable skills. For those of you that hopefully you would have heard about it, but we've got the STAR method. So I don't know if people have used the STAR method before, but that's a really strong method. And if you don't know what that is, if you just put online STAR method interview technique, there is loads and loads of information out there. But it's a great situation to structure your answers. Situation, what was happening, task, what you needed to do, action, what you did, and result. Specific quantified answers is always going to score you the highest, always. So if you can get into the habit of doing that, for those of you that are, our students, if you have an interview, and I can echo my team, if you have an interview, that is our priority. We will always find time to help you prepare, whether that's an assessment day, mock interview. Some people will have presentations. Please, even if you're not, and I'm conscious I'm going to say this, and we'll probably get lots of emails, but even if you're not technically assigned to us at this point, you're very new in your study. If you have an interview, please just reach out to us. And if we can send you some preparation, we will. But try not to overthink interviews until you're at interviews, because the more specific your preparation, the better, you're going to be prepared for it. So that's where we come in. But yeah, if you're unsure, STAR technique, that isn't a learning people sort of method. That is a method that lots of people use, and a lot of employers expect people to follow that technique when you're in interviews. But we will go through that all with you.
Great. That's really good to hear. We're going to move on to the next section, which is about the future. But before we do, there's a question that's come through, and I know this is one of your favourite ever questions, Sophie. So I'm going to put it to you.
I hope so.
From an anonymous person. So this is the how long roughly does it take to land your first cyber role?
That's not my favorite. Everyone asks me that question. I mean, who knows? Everyone's journey is really different. I think if I sit here and gave you a set amount of time, that wouldn't be, overly transparent. We've had people that have landed a job within, a couple of weeks, and then I've got people that I've worked with for months and months and months, and that isn't a reflection on necessarily them. The key thing I will say is the more you engage with what we do, and the more you kind of listen to our feedback, network, research, carry out really specific applications, the quicker you're going to land your role, and be open to opportunities. People come to us and they have such high expectations on salary and whatever. I'll give a good example of someone I was working with. She had really high expectations on salary. She was open to it, took a slightly lower salary than what she wanted. And within 4 weeks, she was up in a more senior position. So there is progression in these roles. So the key thing is I'm not going to give you a time frame, because everyone's job search is really different. But the more you engage, the more you listen to our content, the more you research, the more you network, the more likely you're going to land yourself a role.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Sophie. I know it can be a tricky one to answer, because it can depend on the situation and the person, but that's an excellent answer, I'm sure.
Everyone asks me that question. Everyone.
Yeah, sorry to throw it your way again.
You're good. I'm used to that question.
And you're good at answering it. Thank you very much. Lots of great actionable advice in that section. So we've only got 8 minutes left, and we're going to stay true to the timings. So we're going to finish off. I'm probably going to turn back to you, James, for a couple of questions about what you think the future of the cyber landscape holds. Just before I do, I'm going to launch a poll about people's confidence with AI. So you should see that pop up now. What level of experience do you have with using AI at the moment? Everything from complete novice to expert with qualifications. Just drop your answer in there and we'll take a look at that in a moment. So future-proofing for 2030 and beyond is the headline of this section. And we're going to have to just speed through in the last few minutes we have. So James, one of the questions I had in terms of future-proofing your career in this industry is, what's your opinion on whether you should do deep specialization or maybe be more of polymath, so more broad across a lot of areas of cyber? Or is there, I've learned very recently about this thing called a T-shaped professional, where you have deep technical roots but then broad understanding of lots of things. So maybe that's the middle ground, but what would you say on that in terms of making yourself future proof?
Oh, great stuff about future proofing, and there is a big discussion about, broad people have broad levels of understanding, and then people who have specific things. So a couple of things to think about. No one can afford to have a serious weakness in any of what I call the pillars of IT. And by pillar of IT, I mean, for example, data, networking, cybersecurity is one of those. These are pillars that are foundational. Endpoints, understanding them. What happens is moving. A lot of people will get very good deep knowledge in something, but they don't have every element that they should foundationally. That's why earlier in one of the webinar chats here, if you open up the chat, there was somebody talking about A plus and network plus, security plus. That's a way of making sure you don't have any fundamental gaps. One thing I hear a lot from hiring managers is, I need people who understand, have a good understanding, even if they're not going into data, they have to understand a lot of foundational elements of data. So I'll end there. The next step is, you mentioned T-shaped worker. Yes, I'm a big believer in the T-shaped worker. The idea, folks, is that this is the crossbar here, but meaning broad knowledge, and then to create the T is one area of deep knowledge. But I'm more of a fan of what some people will call an M-shaped worker, or a comb-shaped worker. In other words, you not only have the T, but you have another one. See, that creates an M, right? And so now you have 2 and 3 areas. You try to build as many areas. That allows you to pivot. Cross-training, cross-learning. These are phrases that people are using a lot because you need to have a lot of cross-functional teams. So there you have it. Some people even call it the comb-shaped worker. Like if you run a comb through your hair, which apparently I need to do here. Just the more downward areas you can get as you go, the better. So I'll stop there.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad I asked, because obviously that's a concept, kind of there's lots of shapes and letters in there, but I think, that resonates with people that kind of deep understanding, but I guess working knowledge across a lot of areas.
You have to, because
relevant.
if you don't, because again, and other areas that you can consider delving into, obviously AI, security, for example, everybody has to be conversant with using AI. But another area that is really interesting, 2 areas I'll point out real quick: operational technology. People will use the term OT, SCADA systems. For example, all of us are enjoying power right now, right? Well, that's delivered by operational technology systems that allow the power grid to work, or water and things like that. There are computers that run that. Those things need securing. That's going to be a skill moving forward. And then the last one, we need people who really understand how to put together coding and operations. I realize that AI is taking away all coding jobs, and I'm being facetious there. But we need people who know how to use coding and AI together in smart ways, and to work operationally. So DevSecOps and OT. So I'll end there.
Okay, great. Good to hear. I mean, we've got the results from the poll in that I'll share, which is about AI. So 20% would consider themselves complete novice, but 57%, so the vast majority, would say they've got some experience, so some working knowledge, while 23% have lots of experience. No one would consider themselves an expert. I don't think I would either. I think it's quite a bold claim. But I mean, it's quite a broad, maybe an obvious question, but AI isn't going anywhere. So talking about future proofing in the future, does everyone have to be an AI expert to be good in cyber? Is it a case of working knowledge, or that broad knowledge at the top of the T? Maybe you can help me formulate that better in the answer. But is it as important as we've been led to believe? Yeah, I'm going to continue to be. Good. Then that's quite a good place to end, I think. So we've got a couple of minutes left. I'm going to throw to the speakers just for one final piece of advice that you would give. So we'll go back to you then, start, Sophie. One final parting word to everyone in the audience.
I think, wherever you are, I think whether you're thinking about enrolling, you're a student with us, I think if you can take anything from today, do a bit of research, spend a bit of time this weekend doing a bit of research, really understand the roles that are out there, understand where the market's going. And I think if you do that research, any application, any interview, any networking situation that you're in, you're going to have far more effective conversations. So yeah, my advice is, and don't be put off by AI and stuff. Lots of people see it as barriers. I think if you do your research and you're confident, then there's absolutely no reason why you won't progress in your career in cyber.
Great. Thanks, Sophie. Very encouraging as always. And James, your final word of the session.
I just amplify what Sophie's saying. Research is so important, and continue it. Find good, kind of evergreen resources to go to, whether it be the journals of record, SC Magazine, for example, just the good journals of record, Smart Brief, and things like that to stay current. And get a mentor. Work with, you've got Sophie here.
That's a really good book.
That's a good one.
Yeah, keep going,
Sophie.
No,
yeah.
I was going to say that. Get a mentor every time I go to an event and speak to anyone in cybersecurity. Their advice is that
you have to, and what's so exciting, what the learning people are doing, what Sophie's doing, is they're giving you those tools to be a mentor. So to work with mentors, and one day you'll be a mentor yourself.
Excellent. Yeah, what a lovely thing to end on. Thank you so much to both the speakers. It's been a pleasure to speak with both of you. Then we're at the point to wrap up. If you are a student with us, or you're part of our, or you've graduated, you've studied with us, and you're wondering what to do next, and you want help with that applying, please do get in touch with your career consultant, whether it's Sophie or one of the other team. They'll be really happy to talk to you. As you've heard today, Sophie had so much advice and gave more insight into how they can support there. So I hope that resonated with people, and please do get in touch with them. If you are not a student of ours or haven't been at all and are interested, there should be some links dropped in the chat where you can make an inquiry, and someone will get back to you very soon, usually within a working day. Or you can go to our website and you can inquire there as well. Someone will be in touch soon. Be happy to hear from you. We have a ton of advice on our website, guides, blogs, articles that should be really interesting to people across sectors, including cyber, who are looking to make a career change or start their career. So please do take a look at that. And we also have a really lively and a nice student and alumni group. So if you're a student or part of our alumni community, that's a really nice online community to join on LinkedIn. So I hope to see you there. And that really is it then. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes as well, making this work. Thanks to the speakers again.
Thanks, lovely Robin.
Or day where you are,
Thanks,
James.
Robin. Thanks, Sophie. Thanks, everyone. It's really fun.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.